for want of a meal. Warning: the events, actions, and antics depicted in this book are performed by fictional characters in a controlled narrative setting. Under no circumstances should anyone attempt to replicate, imitate, or recreate any of the behaviors or scenarios described. Doing so could result in serious injury, harm, or unintended consequences. Louise Thrushwood was a modest, motherly mouse that lived within the walls of a quiet two-story home. If anything could be considered loud in her home, it would be the bellies of her grandchildren. And, as the family's food provider, it was her duty to keep them quiet. Each morning, before the sunrise, she would make her way to the house's kitchen to gather crumbs, drippings, and other scraps that had been carelessly left behind by the house's larger residents. This was the Freshwood way, to take only what was left behind while no one was around to care. The most reward of the smallest risk. It allowed her and her family to live in the house without its residents being any the riser. And she wouldn't hear any talk of her family being a bunch of thieves. As her father always used to tell her, it's not stealing if no one wants it. Louise had never encountered any of the house's giants, but she knew they were fond of midnight snacking and less fond of cleaning up after themselves. As a result, most of what Louise scavenged consist of various cheeses, crackers, and cookies, which made up the majority of her family's diet. She would have liked if the house masters snacked on some more fruits and veggies now and again, but the scavengers couldn't be choosers. Wielding her father's sword, which had grown far too dull for combat, she would poke each crumb, inspect it, and place it in her basket if it passed her inspection. That morning, she happened upon something truly special in the midst of rounding up a scattering of cookie crumbs. One of the crumbs in question happened to contain a fully intact chocolate chip, the food of the gods. After sniffing it to confirm it wasn't just a raisin, she held it up to gaze at its shine in the sunlight. She so badly wanted to taste it. It had been months since anyone in her family had even smelled chocolate, but she had to restrain herself. Her father had always warned her about snacking while scavenging. One thoughtless bite could quickly lead to an empty basket. And Louise couldn't bear the thought of her family going hungry because of her. After depositing the final crumbs into her basket, Louise sheathed her sword and immediately headed for home. She didn't want to risk sticking around once the housemasters woke up. The less time she spent outside her mouse hole, the better.